Good evening. This is Maestro Cortello with a Company of Heroes 2 cast. Today we have a 1v1 on a map called Kholodny Ferma. Our two players, first of all we have a player right here named Incredible Fahu, playing as the Ostheer. And on the other side of things, we have a player named Keiser, playing as the Soviet Union. So right away we can see that Incredible Fahu has put down his infantry company, his tier 1 building for the Ostheer. Now interestingly about Fahu is that I believe he actually was a Dawn of War 2 player. Certainly haven't seen him play Dawn of War 2 in a very long time, but I know his name from Dawn of War 2. Now both of these players have really only just started out the game. Fahu he built his infantry company, already has his first grenadier squad coming out. It's hitting the field a little bit later than the first conscript squad that's coming out for Keiser. I think that's something that's just a consequence of the way the starting builds are currently set up, where the Germans, or the Ostheer, need to actually construct a building before they can get out anything other than their builder unit, whereas the Soviet Union can build their conscripts, their basic fighting unit, their basic ranged infantry unit, from their regimental field headquarters, their starting building that they don't need to build. So one of the things you can notice is that the opening capping is much slower in this game than in Dawn of War 2. There's quite a bit more just moving your units around the map to capture the points before any engagements take place. So we're seeing a lot of that right here. And one of the reasons, because of the slower rate of victory point drain, it's actually certainly not as important to get the victory points up early. And one of the things that I first noticed about watching Company of Heroes casts and playing the game is that players tend to, with their opening captures, they tend to prioritize the victory points less, in some cases even ignoring it entirely in favor of getting the other points up, the resource points. Since the points in this game, we have some points that are just represented by circles on the minimap. Those are standard territory points that provide both fuel and munitions. And then you have both the munitions points represented by bullets, which provide more munitions, 11 per minute, as well as the dedicated fuel points, which provide +7 fuel per minute. So now we finally have an engagement. Keiser has mostly captured the top of the map, while Fahu has mostly captured the bottom. Fahu has opened up with a triple grenadier opening, although one of them just got forced off the field. Let's take a look at how many conscripts Keiser has. He actually has triple conscripts. I was half expecting him to actually have more conscripts than Fahu had grenadiers. Wow, we had that Molotov thrown by the conscripts just instantly killed 2 of the models off of that grenadier squad. So Keiser wins that early engagement on the power of his conscripts, particularly on the power of those Molotov cocktails, which is just the early grenade ability that you get from the conscripts in the Soviet Union. It's very good as anti-garrison. There we actually had a demonstration of the rifle grenade, the early grenade ability from the Germans and the grenadiers. Now the difference between those two abilities, the rifle grenade from the grenadiers has longer range. It actually has a minimum range, and it's something that's shot off of their bolt-action rifles instead of thrown with their hands. It mostly just does up-front damage, whereas the Molotovs from the conscripts actually will do a lot of damage over time. Right now what we're seeing is a lot of the grenadiers just straight up losing fights to the conscripts, and certainly that also has a lot to do with the placement of their respective grenades. Right there, Fahu had missed his grenade, whereas Keiser had actually hit with it. It is my perception currently that the Molotov cocktail is a bit better than the rifle grenade, better as anti-garrison, and also just better, period. That is my current opinion at this point in the game's life, and certainly in my experience with the game. I do not yet consider myself an expert, so you can feel free to weigh in on that opinion and offer your opinion if you are playing Company of Heroes. I think conscripts, though, with 2 grenadiers around, the conscripts should lose in that case. They even run through their own fire a little bit, and that one of the conscripts just gets set on fire, retreating through his own fire. So that is one thing you have to be careful about. Certainly one of the funny and amusing things I find about this game is whenever I'm playing as Germans and I'm playing against someone who's playing as the Soviet Union, and they throw a Molotov that somehow they end up hurting themselves more than they end up hurting me. It's always just quite funny and cute. We have some pioneers right here from Fahu. They are staying behind cover against these conscripts. That's actually clearly a losing battle, but I think the reason Fahu is doing that is just to stall out. Just to stall out so that he can keep the VP a little bit longer. He's paying for that time in the manpower that it's going to cost to reinforce those pioneers, and I'm not entirely sure if that's worth it, but I think that's what he was trying to do. Regardless of whether or not it was worth it, I think that was his motive behind what he was doing right there. So all the engagements have taken place, and now we're back to the capping mode. Max Keiser now has a 4 conscript opening, 4 conscripts in total. This isn't, as far as I know, this isn't terribly uncommon, and this is what I built in the very last 1v1 game that I played. Fahu, on the other hand, has rushed a little bit. He's gotten only 3 grenadiers to to Max Keiser's 4 conscripts, although one of those conscripts just got wiped. And Fahu has now built a half-track. A half-track is a transport. It actually functions much like transports in Dawn of War 2, in that you can reinforce from it. That means squads can get their members back after they have lost them. We actually see the grenadiers right here are reinforcing from that half-track. You can also transport units inside the half-track, and that gives you more mobility because the half-tracks are quite a bit faster than regular infantry units. What's also very commonly seen with the half-track, this German half-track, is getting these flame projector upgrades. Flames are pretty strong in Company of Heroes 2, both as an anti-garrison response, as well as even just an anti-infantry response. And it just does very good damage over time. You actually buy flames in this game with the intention of using it as anti-infantry, as opposed to Dawn of War 2, where usually if you're getting a flamethrower weapon, you're either getting it for the purpose of bashing generators or for the purpose of anti-garrison, specifically for those purposes. So in Company of Heroes 2, on the other hand, you very generally just get flamethrowers just as an infantry counter, especially since you can get flamethrowers on this half-track. You can also get flamethrowers on pioneers as well as combat engineers, the starting builder unit, and that makes them quite a bit more effective. So Max Keiser, he still has his triple conscripts. He originally started out with quadruple, and now he has triple because he lost one. As far as he does not yet have another unit. What could he have in the making? He built the support weapon camp, and he's getting a divisional field gun. The divisional field gun is basically the anti-tank gun for the Soviet Union. So again, if you're a Dawn of War 2 player, think of that in terms of like your las cannons, your bright lances, etc. It is a setup weapon. It needs to be facing correctly, and it also takes time to set up and deset up. Now, unlike Dawn of War 2, you cannot retreat your anti-tank guns. But he's getting that because much like this is actually somewhat different. Now the half-track in Company of Heroes 2 is considered a light vehicle. There are many more different classes of vehicle in Company of Heroes 2 than in Dawn of War 2. Generally, in Dawn of War 2, a vehicle is a vehicle, and that basically means it's impervious to small arms fire. Now, in Company of Heroes 2, this is a light vehicle, so it actually is vulnerable to small arms fire. So it's actually more like a Sentinel. Think of it more like a Sentinel, or think of like the Grey Knight Rhino in the Elite mod, which is a transport with super heavy infantry armor, not vehicle armor, so it is vulnerable to small arms fire. Usually, though, especially in Company of Heroes 2, you still want some dedicated anti-vehicle to take out those light vehicles, especially since we saw that field gun was very powerful against that half-track, and the half-track was destroyed. But if you look at the map, the red right now is Fahu. I know it gets confusing because I switch back and forth, but the red right now is Fahu. So he did lose his half-track But he managed to take the map on the strength of that half-track, pushing Max Keiser into his base. Because as long as Fahu had that half-track, he was really just pretty much going to own pretty much all of the infantry units coming out of Max Keiser. Another conscript gets down to very low health and just escapes out of there with one model. He actually replaced one of his conscripts, so he has 4 conscripts yet again. And I think one of the reasons Max Keiser is choosing to emphasize conscripts, I mean, Soviet players just get conscripts anyway, like regardless of what style they choose to play with the Soviet Union. But particularly, Max Keiser has the conscript support tactics doctrine. This is a conscript-centric doctrine, basically. In fact, 4 out of the doctrine's 5 abilities are designed to synergize with conscripts. He has the hit the dirt ability, which basically allows conscripts to go prone. It's an ability that allows them to go prone, and the effect, I think, is somewhat similar to cover in that it just reduces the damage they receive, and I think it's actually even better than that. They can get the PPSH upgrade for the conscripts, giving them submachine guns, improving their anti-infantry firepower. The conscript repair kit, basically allowing the conscripts to also repair so that you don't even really need combat engineers, as well as this rapid conscription ability, which is an ability, there's really no equivalent to that in Dawn of War 2. It's basically an ability that once activated, it costs munitions. Once activated, it will replace any conscripts that are lost. Sort of for free, except for the fact that you're paying that 200 munitions, but you aren't paying manpower, which is what you normally use to buy and replace infantry units. We see the conscripts are fighting these grenadiers. Both units are Vet 1. Now, with the veterancy, you don't really get any actual fighting, benefits out of having just veterancy 1, unless you get an ability that is actually an ability related to fighting. So Max is pushed out back onto the field. He now has a Maxim gun, which is set up in a very, very awkward position. It seems to be positioned so that it will shoot inside the building. I don't think it can shoot through the building. That is a very awkward position, and I'm hoping Max will change that. But we already have a Panzer IV medium tank out of Fahu. Let's go back to Fahu's side. So Fahu has already teched to Tier 3. He has his support armor core up, and he has this Panzer IV tank already. And Max almost seems a little bit behind. He only has 1 tech building up, and he actually has the same number of units. And the only counter, let's see, the counters Max has, he does have the anti-tank grenades researched on his conscripts. Those anti-tank grenades cost munitions, and they're certainly not enough to kill a tank by itself, but they will cause in this case, it caused a engine damage critical that reduces the speed of the Panzer tank, and that makes it very vulnerable to follow-up anti-tank, more serious anti-tanks such as this field gun. And if you actually just reposition that field gun, that Panzer IV could have been in a lot of trouble. Again, of course, you need to be very careful with the positioning of your field gun, however, since it cannot retreat, and if a unit like these Panzer Grenadiers just rush up to the field gun, they can actually just really kill all the crew members of the field gun, and then you can lose your field gun entirely since it can't retreat. The machine gun now seems to be where Max probably intended it to be, which is inside the garrison. Garrisons are quite a bit more useful in this game than in Dawn of War 2. First of all, there's simply more of them, and garrison counters generally are not quite as good. And that's not to say that the garrison counters don't work. They certainly do, particularly those Molotov cocktails out of the Soviet Union. But in Dawn of War 2 had an interesting relationship with garrisons where if you didn't have anti-garrison, your unit is basically invulnerable inside the garrison. And then once you do have anti-garrisons, garrisons practically become a death trap. So Fahu is trying to use many of his anti-garrison abilities to dislodge this machine gun. He's taken the machine gun down to half health, but it still has 5 of its members. He used 1 rifle grenade, and this is actually the 3rd grenade he used to try to get that machine gun out of the building. One of my current impressions is that right now German anti-garrison is a little bit lacking. So far, well, so I mean, the good thing there is that Fahu did by destroying the building, first of all, he destroyed the building, so that denies Max the ability to use that garrison in the future. And of course, much like in Dawn of War 2, if a unit is inside a building when it gets destroyed, it gets wiped regardless of how much health it has. So Max lost that machine gun. Now, the only thing is there that abilities, since they cost munitions, are generally just much more costly in this game than they are in Dawn of War 2. And Fahu used 4 grenades to try to get that machine gun out of the garrison. 4 grenades! That's quite a bit. This Panzer IV is doing quite well. One of the interesting things about what I said about the anti-tank guns not being able to retreat is that if a tank can actually get behind an anti-tank gun, or even just close the distance and then get around it so that it's around its firing arc, that weapon can actually be pretty screwed. That being said, Max has recruited with his pioneers. He just needs to make sure, his combat engineers, so he just needs to make sure that he doesn't lose his combat engineers. I think this field gun still has line of sight. We'll probably get 1 shot off. No, it does not have line of sight, so it does not get 1 shot off. Although I think even if it did get 1 shot off, I don't think it was going to kill that Panzer IV. Although, to be fair, the Panzer IV was exposing its rear armor. Now, rear armor is also something that works very differently in this game than in Dawn of War 2. You can get rear armor hits. In Dawn of War 2, though, it was a bit simpler. Basically, there's a whole thing called vehicle penetration in this game. When you shoot a tank with an anti-tank weapon, there's actually, whether or not you will actually do damage to the tank, it's determined by a % chance to penetrate the armor. So there's actually a possibility that you can shoot an anti-tank weapon at a tank, and the round will just bounce off, and the tank will take little to no damage. In this game, rear armor is the most easily penetrated armor, the way of easily doing damage to tanks and actually getting damage done to tanks, as opposed to in Dawn of War 2, where a rear armor hit is simply a damage bonus. You're going to hit a vehicle even from the front reliably, in fact, pretty much 100% reliably. And it's definitely a very different mechanic, because that's something where Dawn of War 2 works much more consistently. It's just you're pretty much guaranteed to do damage to a vehicle as long as you are in range to hit it and your unit fires. In this game, anti-tank rounds can actually bounce off tanks. And this is determined by a number of factors. It's actually somewhat random. There's a % chance to penetrate. Different tanks have different levels of armor, and heavier tanks with more armor will generally deflect more anti-tank rounds than medium tanks or light tanks. So Fahu now has 2 Panzer IVs. One of them is upgraded with a turret machine gunner, or a pintle-mounted machine gunner, as it's called. A pretty cheap upgrade. It just gives the Panzer IV some extra anti-infantry firepower, although the Panzer IV is already fairly decent at anti-infantry. This Panzer IV is in a pretty bad position, though. But Fahu is actually moving his Panzer IV around so that it did not get rammed there. Right there, we saw that Max Keiser tried to use the ramming ability of the T-34, and Fahu actually moved closer and moved to the side of the T-34 so that it could not ram. That time, he couldn't stop himself from getting rammed, though. And the Panzer IV is actually immobilized, as well as both tanks are immobilized. This is actually rare. Generally, when the T-34 rams a tank, it will immobilize the T-34, but only give the tank that gets rammed a damaged engine, meaning it can still move, but just at a slower rate. However, it does have a small chance to actually immobilize it entirely. It's a small chance, and this is, again, something that's determined somewhat randomly as far as I know, and that's actually what happened in that case. Now, a bunch of tanks died. 1 Panzer IV died. Max lost his T-34 as well, so Max lost his only tank. Fahu is in a nice position in that he actually still has a tank. But he did lose quite a bit in that engagement. He lost quite a few units. Let's see. Let's look at Max's units. He still has quite a few units, but he doesn't have his tank anymore. He does have those 4 conscripts. This one is already vet 3, so at vet 3 the conscripts, they get an accuracy bonus and 2 increases in durability, 1 at vet 2 and then another one at vet 3. Those conscripts with the PPSHs and also with that veterans are going to be quite a bit tougher and more threatening, especially once they use that hit the dirt ability. This Panzer IV, I think Fahu needs to be careful. He's just charging that gun. And I mean, at this point, he will probably decrew the gun, but he's being very bold. To be fair, in this case, it did pay off. He decrewed the gun again, and I'm guessing he'll maybe destroy the gun so that Max Keiser can't recrew it anymore. But Fahu is about to lose a Pioneer squad. Oh my god. So Fahu is down to very few units. He only has 2 Grenadiers, a Panzer Grenadier squad, as well as Pioneers and his now half-health Panzer IV. So it doesn't seem like he's in a great position right now. It looks like Max Keiser is getting much of the map back. And Max Keiser also has another tank just coming out right now, another T-34-76. Those T-34-76s are very cheap. If we take a look at the cost, it's only 240 manpower and 95 fuel. That's very, very cheap. By comparison, if we take a look on the other side, take a look at Fahu's units. That Panzer IV that he has is 320 manpower and 115 fuel. That being said, the Panzer IV does seem to be largely the better tank. It seems to be better both as anti-infantry and anti-tank, aside from that ram ability. But I guess the upside to that T-34 being so cheap is just that you can pretty easily put one on the field. One of the other things that's also different about what these two players are doing right here, Fahu has actually built all of his tech buildings. So if we look in his base, he has just all of his tech buildings. Now that's an investment in those tech buildings, which he could be using on just getting units out of fewer tech buildings. And that's something that sometimes people will do in this game. They won't necessarily build all of the tech buildings. They'll only... Wow! Building destroyed, and so does that. I believe that was a machine gun from... That was actually a machine gun from Max Keiser. Goes down, destroyed inside that building. And Max Keiser is moving his mortar team out. It's very exposed right now, and it's probably needs to retreat so that it does not get decrewed. This field gun right here is actually using its ability to do a barrage. This barrage actually is an anti-infantry function of the field gun, and that gives the field gun some nice versatility, particularly over the German anti-tank gun, the PaK-40, since that really is just exclusively an anti-tank gun. The barrage ability is a bit expensive. It costs 60 munitions, so it's certainly a little bit expensive, but it's just some versatility and anti-infantry capabilities that Soviet field gun has that the German anti-tank gun just simply does not. And right here, though, Fahu now has 2 tanks out on the field. He now has the Panther medium tank. The Panther comes out of the Heavy Panzer Corps. And if you'll notice, we've got some of those custom skins, or not really custom skins, but just skins. And you got tiger stripes on both of Fahu's tanks. So combined, this is actually a good position for Fahu. He's lost a lot of units, a few too many, I think, but he's somehow been on the better end of tank production. And part of that may have been that he's just not building as many other units. And I'm surprised to see him go for so many of these tanks from the tech buildings when he's chosen the doctrine that allows him to build tiger tanks. He actually doesn't even need to have those production buildings, and then he would be able to get the tiger tank, would actually be a stronger tank. Although that being said, this doctrine, this is actually a very interesting doctrine. It's not the doctrine with the Opel Blitz truck, although it does still have that tiger tank. But one of the things that let's go back, take a look at Max Keiser. I think maybe one of the things Max Keiser is dealing with, he does not really have enough fuel to put out many tanks. He's already lost some T-34s. Those T-34s probably not going to be much of a match for this Panther. As it is, they weren't quite a match for the Panzer IV. And one of the things that, that Max Keiser was doing, he was using the ram to disable those tanks, but he didn't really have enough to follow it up. He had the field guns, although at the time he only had one field gun. Now he has two. But Max Keiser, unlike Fahu, has not built all of his production buildings. He's only built two. And now, out of the two vehicle production buildings that he's chosen, or rather, the two tank production buildings, since a vehicle can come out of the Special Rifle Command, out of the two tank production buildings, he's gone for... I wouldn't... In a way, saying the weaker one isn't quite exactly right, since there are certainly things about it that are very strong, but he's certainly gone for the lighter one. Out of this one, you just get the T-70 light tank and the T-34-76, as well as that half-track. And that T-34-76 is nice for how cheap it is. It's nice for the RAM. It's nice for how early you can get it because of how cheap it is. But as far as going up against other tanks, it's just not really a match. It's cheaper because it's not quite as effective. So it's not really going to be a match for the Panther or the Panzer IV. And by committing to that building, you're putting down those resources to go for this building. It does make it a little tougher to basically just to have sufficient anti-tank as well as your own tanks to fight your opponent, basically. Max Keiser has also gone for a doctrine that does not have any tank call-in, so he can't call in any other tanks as well. So he's really going to be mainly relying on his field guns as anti-tank unless he wants to get another tech building. And getting another tech building, I would say would not be that bad of an idea, considering that Max Keiser already has quite a big army. So it's not like he's lacking for units overall. He's just really lacking heavier units, and specifically heavier tanks. What is this? Oh, that was an incendiary barrage. Look at how incendiary it is. Basically, it's mostly an anti-infantry off-map artillery ability. But Fahu has very smartly moved out of it and is actually still capturing this point. So that's actually very smart by Fahu. He just sees all of this fire, found a spot where there was no fire, and kept on capping. And that gives him the VP at a time where he could really use the VPs, since Max Keiser had a triple cap against Fahu. Now we see that Max Keiser likes to use those buildings, and he keeps on losing units inside those buildings. So he lost like a unit inside that big church, this house over here, and now he's just using this little shack. And, I mean, luckily for Max Keiser, he does seem to be winning his infantry fights. He's winning his infantry fights in part because he has conscripts with PPSHs. Fahu, on the other hand, has a Panzer Grenadier squad right here that has been upgraded to have Panzer Shreks, which severely decreases basically cuts the anti-infantry firepower of the Panzer Grenadiers in half. And there the conscripts actually got wiped. The Panzer Grenadiers came very close to getting wiped. Now we have those two tanks. And one of the things that obviously does not really work about that ramming ability is that you're probably just going to lose your T-34 if you're doing it in a position where you're up against two tanks. Now, I think what Max is counting on, he's probably counting on losing his T-34, but he's also probably hoping to at least take out one of the German tanks with his field guns. He did have his field guns in a position where they could follow up. Unfortunately for Max, this time he did not get an immobilization on that Panther, and we have another Panther. So armor spam out of Fahu. He only got a damaged engine this time on the vehicle that he rammed. So this Panther was actually able to get out of there. And then the Soviets, they don't quite have, certainly without well, all right. Let me shut up for a second because I was about to say that Fahu or Max Keiser did not really have much in terms of mobile anti-tank follow-ups. But as it turns out, Max Keiser has a Vet 3 conscript squad that has also picked up a Panzer Shrek, and those Panzer Shreks are pretty nice as anti-tank. Although Max Keiser is losing a lot of units at this point. but he's still got this hero Vetri Conscript squad. Has 17 kills as a squad. If we actually take a look, it has 16 infantry kills, 1 vehicle destroyed, and has even killed 2 friendlies, 2 Soviets. And it's also surprising to see Fahu pushed back a lot when it seems like he does have the superior armor, but Max Keiser has armor of his own as well as anti-armor or anti-tank. He does have those anti-tank guns. And Fahu, now with very few units, the unit preservation has not quite been stellar. He only has 2 Panzer Grenadiers right now, as well as 1 Grenadier and 2 tanks. This Panther is also exposing its rear armor, not a good position to be in, not a good position for either of these tanks to be in. This Panther in particular is in the firing arc of 2 field guns and can also risk getting rammed. I think this T-34 should have rammed a little earlier. Now the T-34 can ram, but it can't ram when it's too close, and there it is going to get the ram. So that will be the end of that T-34. And then the Panther needs to be careful. It's about to move again. It's about to move right in front of the firing arcs of these field guns. I think it will just barely get out of there, but it is also quite damaged. Looks like we had, I don't even know what. If we take a look at this Panther 4, I wanted to center around. It's got that. It has 2 vehicle criticals right now. It has a damaged, exhaust damage. That's interesting. Basically just limiting top speed, but that's a damaged engine, basically. It also has its main gun destroyed, meaning it cannot fire its main gun. It can fire the machine guns, but it can't fire its main gun, so right now it can't do anything against another tank. Now, Fahu has unlocked all of the abilities from his doctrine. He's actually now saving some resources, although he does not yet have enough resources to get another Panther out, which may be what he's going for. Or he could save up for this much more expensive Tiger. Oh, we did see that incendiary barrage there from Max Keiser did force off some of those Panzer Grenadiers that were decapping this fuel point. So there is a little bit of a lull in the action right now. And again, that's something we see more in Company of Heroes 2 than in Dawn of War 2. It is a bit of a slower game, and it also does take time to repair vehicles. And usually you don't want to send a vehicle. I mean, actually, this is true of either game. You don't want to send a vehicle into an engagement without at partial health on you, unless you really, really need to for whatever reason. Like it's going to cost you the game or something. But we also have some Vetri Grenadiers from Fahu, and there they did decrew that field gun. These Grenadiers need to get out of there, though. They're in red cover. They're in the open, and they get wiped. They were trying to use a Panzerfaust on those T-34, on that T-34, and they get wiped in the process. So many units dying in this game. Games can also take quite a long time in this game. I was actually playing a game earlier today that was actually pretty one-sided. I was winning by over 400 victory points before some lag issues caused us to drop the game. But it was still half an hour for a game that was actually very one-sided. So Fahu is actually, he's choosing not to get a Tiger. And I'm very surprised to see Fahu go for the build that he has gone. Not just the build, but, well, yeah, the build. Particularly getting all of the tech buildings, getting both Panzer IVs as well as Panthers. When he has chosen a doctrine that allows him to get a call-in tank, mainly this very expensive and powerful Tiger tank. Which it's just interesting to see that. I would think that if you're going for a doctrine that has something like the Tiger tank, you would at least spare one of those tech buildings. But that's not the case here. Max Keiser, on the other hand, he has gone quite differently. He has actually not built 2 of his tech buildings, and that's actually surprising considering he's gone for a doctrine that does not give him a powerful calling tank. So Max is very limited in terms of his armor capabilities. He's mainly focusing on having his field guns, relying on his field guns for anti-armor, and really relying that on to do most of his anti-armor damage. Now, he needs to be able to protect his field guns well, since they are, of course, again, they cannot retreat. And he's going to be relying a lot, I think, on these two T-34s for that ram, and then so he can follow up with the field guns once those tanks that get rammed have a damaged engine or are even immobilized. Now, one of the things that Fahu is doing that's working out is that he's actually he's overwhelming those field guns just by having so many tanks. And in this case, even if Max is going to ram one of the tanks, again, that immobilizes his tank, but it only gives the Panther a damaged engine, as well as that main gun destroyed. So Max is going to lose this T-34, whereas, to be honest, Fahu probably won't lose either of these tanks in this case. And yet, he had the field gun there to follow up, but it just wasn't enough. Now, I was going to say I was a little concerned about Fahu driving straight up to that field gun, but he actually somehow managed to destroy it, and I didn't even really saw what destroyed it. And Max Keiser being very aggressive again. He tried to take out that Panzer IV with his T-34, but, I mean, that T-34 with that 76mm gun is just not that great as anti-tank. It can still kind of damage it, but just not enough. And there's a high chance that the Panzer IV will actually deflect the shots. Wow, we actually saw the Panther go down there. And again, I'm not even sure what happened. It was probably a shot from this field gun at long range. Yes, that Panther was in range. The field gun was in range of that Panther. It's also in range of the Panzer, although the Panzer is now in a position where it has managed to block line of sight. And I think Fahu should try to keep this alive. It is a Vet 3 Panther now. So Max has actually managed to keep the field, and he's got quite a bit of map control. Fahu is mostly just trying to play the capping game up top, having some of the units break off, not even fight, but just capture up top to kind of keep himself in the game, both give him resources as well as some victory points. These conscripts being very aggressive. They threw an anti-tank grenade. I don't know if that was worth it. They lost 2 of their models, and they did not kill with that anti-tank grenade. Those anti-tank grenades for the conscripts, again, really not enough as anti-tank on their own. They're a nice, much like the way you would use melta-bombs in Dawn of War 2, since they will often cause a damaged engine critical, and that allows you to follow up with some more serious AV like these field guns. Unfortunately, Max Keiser only has 1 field gun at this point, and this Panther has already gotten around it. The Panther is shooting. It's kind of missing a bit. Max Keiser is trying to reset up that field gun, but Fahu is just going to micro around it so that he can continue to shoot. And at the moment, this field gun is the only anti-tank that Max Keiser has. So there's actually nothing he can do except stall out, hope this field gun does not die too quickly. He will probably get his conscripts here to throw an anti-tank grenade. Yeah, there goes an anti-tank grenade. It does give the Panther a damaged engine, but that's still just not really enough. Since the Panther is still just able to circle around, we should see some more follow-up from Fahu, I think. He may have a little bit of trouble since there's still a machine gun protecting an anti-infantry approach right there on top. And this is kind of funny, just with Fahu constantly circling this field gun. The field gun proving to be very durable with its 6-man weapon crew, but it still just cannot get a shot off. Now, Fahu is losing his VPs while he does not have the map at this point, so he's losing the VP drain. The VPs are draining against him and in favor of Max Keiser. But this is quite funny. But now, oh, Max Keiser does have some kind of answer, but now the field gun finally dies. The field gun finally dies. Now, what's not so good here is that Fahu has his Panther. It's actually facing backwards. So he's exposing his rear armor to that T-34. But the Panther might just be so much better than the T-34 that it will win anyway. And a Panther stays alive. So some pretty ridiculous battles. Fahu seems to be... In some ways, he's winning the fights, but he obviously has not been winning the map. What that means for Max Keiser is that he should at least theoretically be doing better on resources, although he might also be bleeding a lot from his conscripts. One of his conscripts nearly goes down. In fact, he loses a Vet 3 conscript squad. So he lost his Vet 3 conscripts. A lot of losses so far, certainly on Max Keiser's side. Fahu, in part, is not controlling the map just because he doesn't have many units. He still does not have many units. And Fahu is now, he's actually floating manpower, but he's floating manpower, but he does not have a whole lot of fuel. So he's probably not going to get a Tiger anytime soon. It's actually going to be a while before he can afford another Panther, although getting another Panzer IV would not be out of the question, since a Panzer IV is 115 fuel. He's at 85 right now, although he doesn't have much in terms of fuel income, since Max Keiser has both of the fuel points on the map. And there goes, and that was an incendiary barrage from Max Keiser, ultimately hitting not a whole lot. In fact, pretty much nothing. I think it probably got those Panzer Grenadiers a little bit, but Fahu is paying attention, and he just micros out of there. This Panzer IV... It must be... It's actually probably really nice to have a Vet 3 Panzer IV. Probably scales pretty well, considering the Panzer IV is already pretty good to start out. It's very much an all-around tank. Can function both as anti-tank as well as anti-infantry. And now it has all these buffs. It actually has 60 kills as well. 55 infantry kills as well as 5 vehicle kills. And also killed 2 friendly units as well for some reason. But at Vet 1, it gets the Blitzkrieg ability. This ability costs 30 munitions, and it allows the Panzer IV to move at a much faster speed. Speed is something that is always very good in these Relic RTSs. It's something that not everybody realizes, but speed is really, really good. And that's one of the things that's really good about that Ura ability from the Conscript. Speed is, it's just faster flanks when you need it, better map control. Even things like more killing on retreat. You don't have melee units in this game, but there are times when you have a unit like a scout car early on, where that can, with the speed of that scout car, you can chase down a unit with a flamer inside and get a kill on retreat that most other units would not be able to get. So speed is very valuable, and this Panzer IV has an ability that can increase its speed. It also has, let's see, it has Veterancy 2, it gets a reduction to damage taken, and at Veterancy 3, it gets an increase to weapon damage. So this Panzer IV is probably going to be quite a bit tougher. I actually wonder if it would be better than this unvetted Panther. I don't know the exact stats, but right now we just know that this Panther has no veterancy. The Panzer has an increase both in its durability and its damage output, so it's going to be quite nice, as well as it has that turret machine gunner, whereas the Panther does not right now. Although Fahu could just straight up buy it for a very nominal resource cost. The only thing is that you need to be in your own territory to get weapon upgrades in this game, and right now Fahu is well into enemy territory. Fahu is very low on VPs. It's actually been a triple cap against him, but he did just kill most of Max Keiser's armor. One of the disadvantages with basically just the style of, or the choices that Max Keiser has made is that basically his armor is going to be very fragile because he's mainly just has access to those T-34s. They're not a terribly durable tank. We have a Vet 3 Panzer IV, which probably has an advantage over that T-34, even in its completely unvetted form. And now Max Keiser, he's relying on those field guns. They are just getting killed. And part of the reason those field guns are getting killed is actually just the fact that Fahu has multiple tanks. He can circle around, come from different directions, and as long as one tank gets around his field gun, that's really all he needs to win that engagement. And Max Keiser just doesn't have enough to follow up and even punish that, because he only has the one field gun, at least right now, because he lost that other one, and he only has that T-34. He doesn't have more serious tanks, like or just tanks that would be better for functioning as anti-tank, like an Su-85 tank destroyer. And the map control has now gone back completely in favor of Fahu. Fahu is low on VPs. He only has 48 left, but he's taken back the map. He seems to have mostly done it on the strength of his armor, because he had the smaller army, but he's gone for an armor-centric play, whereas Max Keiser has mostly gone for an infantry-based play, in part because he got all those conscripts to synergize with the conscript, with the doctrine that he chose to get, the conscript support tactics. Now, Fahu has not actually really made great use of his doctrine. In fact, I don't think I've seen any of the doctrine-specific abilities basically out of Fahu. He picked a doctrine, and as far as I can tell, he hasn't used the doctrine at all. But he has just gotten an armor-centric play. He focused on getting Panzer IVs as well as Panthers, just solid tanks, very solid tanks that are superior to this T-34. And there the T-34 tried to ram, but now both of the tanks are too close, and the T-34 cannot use that ramming ability when it's too close. T-34, it does get the ram off, it does get a damaged engine, but the T-34 itself gets destroyed entirely. So that T-34 ramming ability, it can be really annoying when used well. In this case, the risk for that ram has not really been paying off in Max's favor. It's regularly paying off in Fahu's favor. I mean, he's just getting his Tiger or his Panther. It has its main gun destroyed. It has engine damage, but it's here. It's still alive. It has pioneers that will restore its health. In fact, Fahu has even stolen. It looks like he's even stolen that T-34. The only issue is that an incendiary barrage, which kind of missed. This conscript squad actually has double Panzer Shreks. So I think it will actually takes out the stolen T-34, and I think it will take out this Panther. Unfortunately for Max Keiser, he put down that incendiary barrage, and the fire lasted forever. He killed his own field gun crew and almost lost that conscript squad with Panzer Shreks. And because of that, because he used the incendiary barrage right there, he did not actually finish off this Panther 4. I thought that was going to be a dead Panther 4, but it's not. It's still here. And now Panther 4. I keep saying Panther 4. It's just a Panther. Panther, Panzer 4, and this right here is the Tiger. So finally Fahu decides to get that Tiger. Look at this big box. It's just huge. Look at how big it is. And it's a Tiger tank with Tiger stripes. So it's like really like a Tiger. But I mean, it's just bigger than those other tanks. Look at how big it is. It's so big. And now finally we also have that fragmentation bomb ability coming down. Oh, it didn't seem that good. But we still finally saw Fahu actually use some of his doctrine-specific abilities, which for most of the game it really seemed like he didn't. Now, he's got the Tiger somewhat alone by those field guns, but it seemed to just straight up destroy one. It's getting around the other. Right now it's looking very good for Fahu, and he's even managed to rebuild a decent infantry force. His unit preservation this game has not been amazing. In fact, he just lost a unit while I wasn't even looking. He just lost a unit, and it was a Panzer Grenadier squad. Those are valuable units. I mean, he has 2 Pioneers that are idling in base that should come out and get ready to repair this Tiger, since it will inevitably need repairs. He's trying to decrew that field gun with the Tiger. I think he should be a little careful about overstaying his welcome. He does decrew the field gun, but there's still these double Panzer Shrek conscripts. That's a very nice play by Max Keiser. He's got Vet 3 conscripts, and he was able to find 2 Panzer Shreks for them. And Fahu still has the rear armor of this Tiger exposed to those conscripts. Luckily, the Tiger has not yet suffered any criticals. It is at fairly low health. That looks like less than 20% health. And right now, Fahu is stalling out with his grenadiers. Unfortunately, I don't think these grenadiers are going to win. No, they're not going to win at all against the conscripts. Not Vet 3 conscripts with PPSHs. Now we have another fragmentation bomb coming out of Fahu. That fragmentation bomb seems to miss. It really... Fahu has used it twice so far, and twice it's been very disappointing. It really has not... Well, I mean, I guess Fahu did ultimately win the engagement, but it still just has not been as impressive as I would have liked it to be. But Max Keiser does have a machine gun protecting his bottom VP. Basically just acting as VP denial. So it's doing a pretty good job of covering the entrances to that VP, so that if Fahu just tries to send over an infantry unit to capture that point, he will probably get suppressed. And that means that Fahu will need to send over a tank, and luckily for him, that's exactly what he's doing. He's got his Panzer IV out there right there. That Panzer IV will... The Maxim gun really can't do anything to that Panzer IV. And for that reason, Max Keiser is just straight up retreating out of there with that machine gun. But Fahu has had some issues with unit preservation in this game. He's lost a lot of units. I don't know. It's my impression that Max Keiser has been doing slightly better, although that impression may also be somewhat biased by the fact that he's just replacing conscripts with conscripts. So these just may be new, fresh conscripts. I did not intend to do that. In fact, he lost a conscript squad. Yeah, he's got some really fresh conscripts that have, like, no veterancy. They actually have, like, no kills. That's a really bad position for that Vet 3 Panzer IV. It's been alive so long. It has 90... Oh, no. The Vet 3 Panzer IV with 95 kills. It had 95 kills. Finally goes down. It even gets abandoned. And I wonder if Max Keiser will try to steal it. Yes, he does. He does steal it. He's also getting the capture off on the middle. Now, it really seems like Fahu has been winning for the past, like, I don't know, 10 minutes or so, maybe longer than that. But Fahu has had very armor-centric play. Now, one of the things that means is just, I mean, the armor is generally just, obviously armor is just generally more powerful than infantry. But it also means he has less capping power, and that's one of the things that Max Keiser still has going for him, which is that, well, he had more infantry units, and now he actually has equal infantry units. So, just kidding. Ironically, though, let's see, Max Keiser, he does have some armor out on the field, but we have both a Tiger and a Panther out for Fahu, so he still definitely has the armor advantage. But Fahu only has those. He's got Panzer Grenadiers, and none of them with Panzer Shreks. I'm waiting for this Panther to shoot at that stolen Panzer, and it finally did. There we go with another ram. This time, Max Keiser, he does not have a field gun to follow that up with whatsoever. So I don't know that that was such a good choice. Because he's just leaving his T-34 out there. I mean, luckily the T-34 still has a lot of health. It will get repaired pretty quickly. So it will be able to... Oh! It was going to get repaired, except that the repairing engineer squad got destroyed. And now we have Panzer Shreks on these Panzer Grenadiers. So that... I would say that would be the end of that T-34, except for the fact that this Panzer Grenadier squad is getting suppressed. But the machine gun is about to get hit by a grenade, but the grenade doesn't do that much. Because those Maxim guns with 6 men crewing it, just very, very durable. Now these Panzer Grenadiers still getting a few shots off, but here comes the Tiger. No, that was actually the Panther, so the Panther got that finishing shot off. It actually was still, it did still have some, it actually got repaired. And now we have the Tiger as well. So we have some major armor coming out of Fahu. Now, one of the issues, though, is that Fahu is about to lose the VPs. He does not have many VPs left. And this Vet 3 Conscript squad in cover with Panzer Shreks is still, like, actually doing a lot of damage, but he has to be very careful now. Almost lost that Conscript squad, I think, but it still had a lot of health. It's very hard to kill those vetted squads that get durability bonuses. But Fahu needs to get a unit on the point. He needs to get a unit on the point. He's got 2 Pioneers repairing. I know he really wants to repair that Panther, but I think he should put 1 on the point right now, since Max Keiser is about to put some conscripts on this VP. It's going to be a triple cap against Fahu, and Fahu does not have that many VPs left. He's still repairing with these double double Pioneers. One of those Pioneers should get on the point. There are conscripts right there. The conscripts are gone, so he needs to get on the point. Get on the point. All right, he's not repairing anymore, so now I think he sees it. And he should actually split up the Pioneers, send one to the other point, since that's the closest unit he has. He probably wants to keep his repair units by his tanks, but he needs the VPs. It's crunch time. He doesn't have that much time left, and he kind of let this capture go off. To be fair, I don't know if his 2-man Panzer Grenadier squad would have beaten the 6-man Conscript squad with PPSHs. But this one has a better chance, and he should actually bring his other Panzer Grenadiers back. Yes, the fuel does not matter that much at this point. Right now, the VPs are definitely more important. At the very start of the game, those resource points were definitely more important. But right now, the VPs are way more important. Way more important. Who with 13 VPs left, 11. It's very, very close. He doesn't have much VPs left. I don't know if he can even... I don't even know if he can get a VP up in time. No, he manages to tie it up at 124 to 7 VPs. Max actually has no units left. I didn't even realize. So Max, I think, he probably realized just how close he was to winning this game. So he just went... What's that? He went for broke. He's got no units left. He's got these hero conscripts. Actually, no, these aren't his original hero conscripts, but they're still Vet 3. Only 13 kills. Fahu. Yeah, I think he's got this one. He's got a Tiger. He's getting a half-track. He's building a half-track. Now, Fahu maybe realizes just how little Max Keiser has. He's building more conscripts. He's getting conscripts because he has the conscript support tactics. Fahu at this point might be getting greedy. He's sending his tanks in to go for some base destruction. He has to be a little careful about making sure he can still hold the victory points. And his tanks are one of the big things that are allowing him to hold the victory points. You do have 1 squad of conscripts about to attack this point, but there are 3 Panzer Grenadier squads right here. And now the conscripts are in red cover. They are going to be taking additional damage. They are getting slaughtered on approach at 4 men now. I don't think they're going to be able to get it. Fahu is now going to have getting a triple cap. Max Keiser still in this, though. He doesn't have much in terms of manpower. But he uses his munitions to get some of those infantry squads. Oh no! This is actually not good at all. Fahu needs to move his tanks back to take care of this conscript squad. There are only Pioneers defending. Pioneers are terrible in combat. Only 2 conscripts left. 1 conscript. Luckily, I think this conscript will die, so luckily for Fahu there. Alright, this could just about be the end of the game. And I think it was. Now, the playback is over. Max Keiser literally has no units left, so yes, that was definitely Max Keiser effectively conceding. There is actually a surrender option in this game, but that was it. Quite a game. Certainly these Company of Heroes games are long, but very hard fought in this game by both sides. Fahu often pinned in his base. Max Keiser going for broke at the end there. Hope you enjoyed the cast. Have a good night.